More than 100 people are known to have died in the worst flooding to hit northern Europe for decades. Many more people are injured or missing. More than 3 months' worth of rain fell in 24 hours over parts of Western Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium. Many local people say they were caught off guard.
Nothing you can do. It feels the sound of the water dripping into your house. I never want to hear it again.
As Germany's president calls for a more determined fight against climate change, we'll have the latest live from Germany and the Netherlands. Also this lunchtime. The Test and Trace app, more and more companies say business is being disrupted because so many staff are being told to isolate. Young people are almost as likely to suffer serious health complications from COVID as people over 50, according to a new study of hospital patients. Four-time Olympic medalist Farah tells us he believes online racism against sportsmen and women is getting worse. He says social media companies must do more.
The social media companies need to do a lot more. They have to be accountable to what people get up to. Even myself, I've had some shocking ones.
And in the run-up to the British Grand Prix, the head of Formula One says hydrogen-powered cars could be the more environmentally friendly future of the sport.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, the second round of the Open Championship is underway at Royal St George's, and Rory McIlroy's battling to make the cut.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the BBC News at 1. More than 100 people are confirmed as having died after some of the worst flooding in decades devastated parts of northern Europe. Many hundreds more people are injured or unaccounted for across Germany, Belgium and the Netherlands. The work of the emergency services is being severely restricted because of the difficult conditions. The German president has called for a more determined battle against climate change. Anna Holligan sent this report.
An apocalyptic scene. Lives, homes, lost to the most devastating floods here in decades. Hundreds are still missing, and more rain is on the horizon. This is one German village, Schuld, but the catastrophic images span 3 nations with banks on the River Meuse. Across the border in Belgium, it's impossible to capture the scale of the disaster, but this is an indication. A submerged town engulfed in flames. In Liège, there are fears it isn't over yet.
I've never seen anything like it. It's scary. I came by at midday yesterday. You could still see the little barrier there. This morning you can't see it anymore. The waters are rising more and more. It's scary.
Many here are asking why events like this appear to be happening more frequently.
In a warmer world, the atmosphere can hold more moisture. And of course, as there is more water, more moisture in the atmosphere, rainfall events can become more extreme. So we've seen before that extreme rainfall events have become more frequent because of climate change.
Here in the Netherlands, this part of Limburg province is now officially classified as a disaster zone, which means the government will offer financial support to those who've lost almost everything.
Here in Valkenburg, they're battling to salvage everything that hasn't already been lost to the floods. A water pipe has just burst, and around here many of the locals were evacuated overnight. They've returned home with shovels and pipes to try to save their own homes.
Brigitte tried to build her own flood defences to protect her family. She told me how it felt to be inside as the water rose.
Fearful, yeah. Always afraid that the water would come in more, and nothing you can do. It feels the sound of the water dripping into your house. I never want to hear it again. Ever. It's terrible.
It's still too soon for many to comprehend the loss or calculate the cost.
Well, in a moment, we'll get the latest from Jenny Hill in Germany. First, though, let's speak to Anna in the Dutch town of Valkenburg. Bring us right up to date with what's happening there, Anna.
Well, they were never expecting this, and the emergency services, as you can see, are now working to restore power, to rebuild these pavements. The Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is due in this province at some point this afternoon. He's urged disaster tourists to stay away. There were actually two major floods here in the early 1990s, and the government invested more than €2 billion in building floodplains, but they simply weren't prepared for this level of rainfall. So they've had more than 20 centimetres in the past 3 days. Experts have said it's a once in a 1,000-year occurrence, and that what's happening here is a wake-up call in this region, but resonating well beyond too.
Anna, thank you. And Jenny, there in Germany, the human toll in Germany, we are a long way from knowing how many people have really been impacted.
Yes, we are. Well over 90 people are now confirmed dead in these floods, but that number is expected to only rise as the day goes on, and that's because a lot of people are still missing. Now, the authorities in Western Germany say they can't really tell us exactly how many people are unaccounted for. That's because mobile phone signal has gone down in many of the affected areas. So it may be that some people are trying to communicate with their loved ones but are unable to, or it may be that the worst has happened. I'm stood on the banks here of the River Erft, and you can probably just see how powerful this water still is. Much of this area is underwater, and just a little bit further behind me in part of the town here, terrible scenes unfolded overnight. A number of houses collapsed, and rescue workers have been trying to get to other people trapped in their homes using boats because the area has been completely flooded. And earlier the authorities actually said that they'd been receiving phone calls from people trapped in their houses, but that rescue, in their words, in many cases was simply impossible. If anyone here thought that today would bring a little bit of fresh hope, it has really been dashed. And actually overnight a reservoir in another part of the region overflowed its dam. That caused more flooding, thousands of people evacuated from their homes. Well over 165,000 households are without power. Now Germany is reeling from these floods. They have devastated not just this region but the rest of the country, and people here right now are having to wait and hope for news of their loved ones.
Jenny Hill near Cologne, thank you, and Anna Holligan as well, thank you. An increasing number of businesses are warning it's becoming impossible to operate properly because so many staff are being told to self-isolate by the NHS Test and Trace app. More than 500,000 people were sent an alert last week across England and Wales. The RMT union has warned of another surge next week because of confusion about mask wearing on public transport. And meat processing plants have said they've had to cut production because of staffing issues, as Ben King reports.
As COVID cases rise, the app designed to protect us is telling hundreds of thousands to stay home. So many, in fact, that some businesses are struggling to stay open.
If I get pinged, my main problem is that the business have to close. Therefore, for me, it's all about safety. So I'll most probably wear a face mask. I've still got my screen up in the shop.
Ping is such a problem because it just shuts everything down. So especially at schools and my customers with their children, they have to isolate them for 10 days if they get pinged, and it's so disruptive to everybody.
The number of app users warned that they've been close to an infected person passed 500,000 last week for England and Wales. That's an increase of 46% on the previous week. At the moment, anyone who is pinged is advised to stay home. But from the 16th of August, people who are fully vaccinated won't have to. Big businesses are also starting to feel the impact of self-isolating staff. Car makers Nissan and Rolls-Royce warned that it might hit production. And the Association of Meat Processors says its members are close to having to close some production lines down.
Most of them are having anything between 5 and 10% being pinged by the app, and actually therefore sort of self-isolating at home. And this is actually causing quite a few shortages for the industry and quite a few problems for the industry, which was already understaffed.
And healthcare providers are warning that staff shortages might hit their ability to deliver care.
In the NHS, it's a very significant issue. We are now at the point where we've got so many NHS staff who are off because of the app pinging that actually, it is beginning to affect patient care.
Meanwhile, other businesses, such as nightclubs, are getting ready to open for the first time in a year, as most coronavirus restrictions are lifted on Monday, and crowds are preparing to gather at big sporting events, which could all mean even more pings. App providers have been asked to reduce the sensitivity to reduce the number of pings, but for now the government says that the app is just doing its job, reducing the spread of COVID.
We are in the middle of a pandemic, and we know that the virus spreads. We know that it spreads without showing any symptoms. And so the app is one of a number of ways in which we're trying to tackle the virus.
The key to the fight against COVID is still the vaccine. And the weekend sees a second Grab a Jab campaign where any adult can get their first vaccination without an appointment at large pop-up clinics around the country. Ben King, BBC News.
So new data suggests the number of people infected with COVID-19 rose by more than 60% in a week. Estimates from the Office for National Statistics suggest 650,000 people had the virus in the week to the 10th of July. That's up from 400,000 in the previous period. Our health correspondent Philippa Roxby is with me. How concerned should we be by this increase, Philippa?
Well, cases are high and rising across much of the UK, with around 1 in 95 infected in England and around 1 in 90 in Scotland, slightly more steady across Wales and Northern Ireland. But the difference between now and the last time we saw these infection numbers is that we have the vaccines. 2/3 of adults have now been fully vaccinated, and they provide very, very good protection. That doesn't mean that hospitals aren't going to be busy and that some people might not end up in hospital. But the good news is that we've got these vaccines in place. And from now on, for the next few weeks, we just need to be extremely cautious as things open up.
All right, Philippa. Thank you, Philippa Roxby. Younger adults admitted to hospital with coronavirus are nearly as likely to suffer from complications as people over the age of 50, according to a new study of 70,000 COVID patients. 4 in 10 patients aged between 19 and 49 develop problems with their kidneys, lungs or other organs while being treated. Our health correspondent Jim Reid has more.
I'm in ICU. My lungs collapsed, and I just found out I have pneumonia.
Looking back 18 months on, Paul was 31 years old last March when he was taken to hospital with what later turned out to be COVID.
It was the worst experience of my life, obviously, and it was horrific. It's one of those things you don't know how to really deal with it, but you just mentally just do. I don't know how.
Well, before the pandemic, Paul was diagnosed with bronchiectasis, a serious lung condition. In hospital, he was told COVID had caused pneumonia.
I couldn't believe how this virus had ruined my body so quickly, and the fight that I'd have to fight. And I could see on their face that they were quite shocked, but they did everything they could.
Paul was treated here in Colchester last year. He's certain the staff at this hospital saved his life.
What we didn't know at the time, though, was just how much damage a severe COVID infection could do to the body. Now, a new study has looked back at the first wave of the pandemic to see how those who needed hospital treatment were affected.
An analysis of 70,000 COVID patients found that half suffered some form of medical complication in hospital. The most common was a kidney injury, followed by lung and heart damage. While those aged 50 and over were most likely to have a problem, researchers said they were surprised to find high levels of medical complications in patients like Paul, in their 30s and even younger.
This study again reinforces COVID is not the flu. We are seeing 1 in 3 of even the youngest of our adults who are coming into hospital suffering significant complications, some of which will require further monitoring and potentially further treatment in the future.
Doctors are not yet certain how COVID can cause organ damage, but it's likely that in some cases the body's own immune system can get carried away and attack healthy tissue. It's thought vaccines can help by reducing the severity of the disease. For people like Paul, the damage caused by COVID has lasted over a year. A reminder that 18 months into this pandemic, we're only just starting to learn about this virus and its long-term impact on our health. Jim Reid, BBC News.
Police and prosecutors are being told to stop blaming each other for the low number of rape convictions in England and Wales. Only 3% of recorded rapes resulted in a prosecution in the year 2019 to 2020. A report by two watchdogs is demanding an urgent and fundamental shift in the way the crime is investigated and dealt with. Our Home Affairs correspondent June Kelly is with me. Still desperately low figures, June.
That's right, Jane. And last month, the government produced its rape review. And one of the key recommendations in that was that police and prosecutors needed to work more closely together. Now, this report today says that there is this blame culture going on. They're pointing the finger at each other. And it says that while you have that mindset, you're never going to get any progress on the stats in getting more cases to court, because the government is committed to actually getting the prosecution rate back to where it was 5 years ago. Now, the people at the top of the police and the Crown Prosecution Service are saying that they have started working more closely together. And in fact, today they announced even greater collaboration. And the watchdogs say, well, that is fine, but where it really matters is what is happening on the ground. And that collaboration has to filter right down. One example, they say for the communication between the two organisations often is done by email. They're saying to them, get on the phone and speak to each other, because these cases need to be discussed. It shouldn't all be done by email. If you think that there were 50,000 rape complaints made in England and Wales, that the latest stats show, that is 50,000 people, and the watchdogs are saying today those people deserve to have their cases properly assessed.
All right, June, thank you. June Kelly, our Home Affairs correspondent. So Farah says he believes online racist abuse towards black sportsmen and women is getting worse. He's called for social media companies to take more action following the racist attacks on England's footballers after their defeat in the Euros final. The four-time Olympic champion has been speaking to Victoria Derbyshire.
Farah has won multiple medals in the 5,000 and 10,000 metres. And now he wants to give his support to England's footballers who were racially abused.
It's really important for myself to show support throughout the world and for black people.
Do you think the abuse that some black sportsmen and women receive is actually getting worse?
It seems like it's getting worse, in my honest opinion, because back in the days, or back in my time, I should say, there was never as much social media.
What kind of racist messages have you had on social media?
I've had some shocking ones. I've had certain things to say, you don't belong, move here. I've had quite a bit.
How does that make you feel?
To me, this is my home. I've always thought about it. The social media companies need to do a lot more. They have to be accountable to what people get up to. Even myself. I've had some shocking ones where people, see the message, I've gone delete, I've blocked, I've gone report, gone back to the report, nothing.
Nothing happens.
Nothing's been done. Nothing happens.
Farah, who's now 38, wanted Tokyo to be his last Olympics, but he didn't make the qualifying time for the 10,000 metres. He exclusively revealed that he's battling an injury.
Yeah, I've got a stress fracture on my foot. I've been struggling for quite a while. Finally got diagnosed with a stress fracture. So, yeah, it's disappointing.
What is the race that you are imagining will be the end of your career?
I think it would be like a marathon, half marathon. And I'd love to be able to, to show one more track event.
So another 10,000 metres?
Somewhere.
So the World Championships?
I don't know, Victoria.
In 2017, you ran at the World Championships, the 10,000 metres, in 26 minutes, 49 seconds. The other week in Manchester, you did it in 27 minutes, 47 seconds. That's nearly a minute slower.
Yeah. In order for me to compete with the best, then I have to be running that time or even faster.
The four-time Olympic champion says he still has the desire to run and insists this isn't the end of his career. Victoria Derbyshire, BBC News.
The time is 1:20. Our top story this lunchtime. More than 100 people are known to have died in the worst flooding to hit northern Europe for decades. Many more people are injured or missing.
And coming up, I'm here at Sandwich, where America's Colin Morikawa leads the way in the Open Championship.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, a break with tradition for Formula One. The sport will introduce a new format across the weekend at Silverstone with a sprint race instead of traditional qualifying ahead of the British Grand Prix.
Now, it's a big weekend for fans of Formula One, with a capacity crowd of 140,000 due at Silverstone on Sunday for the British Grand Prix. As the cars race around the circuit, they'll be burning fossil fuels. But the managing director of F1 says that could change. Ross Brawn has told the BBC that hydrogen-powered cars could be the long-term future for the sport. Our chief environment correspondent Justin Rolat has been looking at the efforts the sport is making to reduce its environmental impact.
The roar of the engines and the smell of the exhaust are what Formula One is all about for many fans. So how does a sport born out of the awesome explosive power of fossil fuels go green? That's the challenge Ross Brawn has taken on. The engineer behind Michael Schumacher's 7 world titles says he's determined to put sustainability at the heart of F1. But electric engines are a non-starter, he told me.
There is no electric solution today. We don't want them looking at power conservation modes and trying to make the battery last long enough to get to the end of the race, or saving the battery up so in the last 5 laps they can really go. That doesn't seem to engage the fans.
Your instinct, it sounds to me, is that possibly hydrogen is maybe the solution that you'll settle on.
Maybe hydrogen is the route that Formula One can have, where we keep the noise, we keep the emotion, but we move into a different solution.
Silverstone, on the day of the season's most exciting Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix.
The cars have come a long way since Jackie Stewart won the British Grand Prix in 1969. But for the moment, F1's focus remains on engineering even more efficient hybrid engines and developing biofuels and synthetic e-fuels that will reduce the sport's impact on the environment. In its effort to go net zero by 2030, Formula One is also reducing the volumes of personnel and freight that travel between races, ensuring all offices, facilities and factories are powered by renewable energy, and using offsets and CO2 sequestration to cover all remaining emissions. But there has been criticism from environmentalists who say F1 is relying too much on offsetting. The recognition that environment is a key issue for the sport runs deep, including with the people on the front line of Formula One, its drivers. British driver Lando Norris is a rising star of F1.
It's definitely something that over the coming years I'll pay more and more attention to, and realizing the opportunity you can create for the world and the impact you can have on the world as well, not just certain people. So of course it means a lot to me, in whatever way I can help, in whatever way, then I'll try and do that.
Formula One represents the pinnacle of automotive technology, but the car industry is going electric, and F1 knows it could end up looking like a legacy of a past age. Other sports should take note. Formula One is going green because it doesn't want to end up a dinosaur. Justin Rolat, BBC News.
Well, as I say, 140,000 spectators will be at the Grand Prix on Sunday. There will be COVID protocols in place. Joe Wilson is at Silverstone. Joe.
Jane, yeah, look, for Formula One fans, there's no mistaking the sense of occasion. This is basically perfection, lovely sunshine and 3 days of motorsport to look forward to, because we have practice and qualifying today, interesting events on Saturday, and then the race itself on Sunday. What's going on over my shoulders? You can maybe just see some of the ticket holders arriving, and what they're doing is showing proof of either a negative lateral flow test or indeed a double vaccine. We've got used to that kind of thing in sport. The other key element that Silverstone have put forward to gain permission to run at full capacity here is the fact that it's a 3.5-mile circuit, big area, mainly outdoors, so maybe we should think of it more like a small town than a sporting stadium. One thing's absolutely clear though, consistently Silverstone have said that they have to run at full capacity, that they need that revenue to just continue as a business. Well, in terms of innovations, very interesting talk there about hydrogen in the cars. In terms of the format, tomorrow what we're going to see is a sprint race for the first time, which will decide and define grid positions for Sunday's Grand Prix proper. So there are always innovations, Jane. I also think there's one eternal rule in motorsport. Generally, the driver with the fastest car wins. And Lewis Hamilton in particular needs to summon any kind of inspiration he can from this Silverstone occasion, because the driver with the fastest F1 car right now, it's not him.
All right, Joe Wilson, very many thanks. Politicians in Northern Ireland have met the Secretary of State, Brandon Lewis, to discuss their opposition to the government's plans for dealing with legacy issues. Proposals to end all prosecutions relating to the Troubles were widely criticised when they were unveiled earlier this week. Dan Johnson is our correspondent at Stormont. What do we know about the tone of this meeting, Dan?
Well, we heard that there were frank and robust exchanges this morning. Now, resolving all the issues stemming from Northern Ireland's troubles was never going to be simple, and finding a solution that pleased everyone was perhaps going to be impossible. But what the British government has achieved is unanimous opposition to the plans that it has laid out across the political spectrum here, across all the groups that represent victims, and the Irish government as well, because there are so many families with so many questions. What happened to their loved one? Who planted that bomb? Who organised that kidnapping? Who carried out that shooting? And what about the soldiers and the security services too? Did they always act within the law? Those are the sorts of questions that still remain for thousands of victims, thousands of people who were injured too, not just in Northern Ireland. And the British government wants to put an end to all the prosecutions, the investigations, the inquests and the civil cases too, right across the board. In effect, an amnesty, as some have described it. And that is what has enraged people here, because they see it as undermining the rule of law. The Secretary of State believes that that will bring people closer to the truth and to reconciliation through ending prosecutions, but in place putting an information sharing and fact-finding operation. But this morning's meeting was responded to by the Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald, saying the British government was acting in total bad faith. The Ulster Unionist leader Doug Beattie said victims' families and survivors were being failed. Well, the Assembly has been recalled here next week so that politicians here can discuss these proposals. The way ahead looks very tricky.
Dan, thank you. Dan Johnson. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has acknowledged that the party has a trust issue with its former voters. In a BBC interview, he said he's determined to win back their support, but said it would be a long, hard road. He's also been filmed taking questions from former Labour voters in Blackpool.
I honestly believe for the Labour Party, it's a stigma of Jeremy Corbyn. He's still 18 months on, and it's still there. People think he's toxic.
Trust is invaluable. If you lose trust in something or somebody or an organisation, to get that trust back is so difficult. You're on kind of a death spiral.
I mean, we lost really badly in 2019. We lost 60 seats in a row, and we've got a lot of work to do to rebuild. And we've got to change. You can't lose that badly and say, well, we'll keep things pretty well as they were, which is what we're doing.
Well, you can see more of that session, and you can see Laura Kuenssberg's interview with Sir Keir Starmer in various ways. It's all on the latest episode of Newscast, which you can get on BBC Sounds, of course, and that will also be on the BBC News channel this evening at 9:30. Now, the second round of golf's Open Championship is underway at Royal St George's in Kent. The world's best players are competing to win the famous Claret Jug over the weekend. Our sports correspondent, Andy Swiss, is watching.
It's about the closest most of us will get to the trophy, the Open's favourite photo op, doing a roaring trade. But for others here, getting their hands on the real Claret Jug is what it's all about.
Rory McIlroy.
After a mixed opening round, the Rory McIlroy fan club was out in force, but they didn't have much to cheer at first as the putts slipped by and he slipped down the leaderboard. Others, though, were flourishing, especially Collin Morikawa. A stunning round from the American, and soon he led the way.
Oh, yes. What a day he's having.
Among a cluster of English players in contention is Tommy Fleetwood, and he soon gave the home crowd plenty to get excited about. But if you thought that was good, well, just watch this. Carlos Ortiz taking the direct route. At the other extreme, though, poor Francesco Molinari, twice trying and twice failing to get out of a bunker. Eventually he did it, but the damage was done. Among a few unheralded names going well, South Africa's Daniel van Tonder, as he surged right into contention. But it's been Collin Morikawa's morning. He's the man they've all been trying to catch. Yes, a terrific day for Collin Morikawa. He's just finished his round on 9 under par. He's currently 3 clear of the rest of the field. As for Rory McIlroy, well, things going a little bit better for him. He's on level par, but still some 9 shots off the pace, Jane.
Andy, thank you. Andy Swiss there in the sunshine in Sandwich. Let's take a look at the weather prospects wherever you are in the country. Hello to Nick Miller.
Hi Jane, and much of the UK on the way to a warm, very warm, even hot weekend. Northern Ireland so far today has already matched its highest temperature of the year so far, likely to exceed in Scotland and over the weekend. But a few spots in England, perhaps Wales reaching 30 for the first time this season. There is an exception, and you can see it on the satellite picture here, with the cloud towards the north and northwest of Scotland, close to a weak weather front. That cloud will stay with us this weekend. From it, you may encounter some light rain or drizzle, and the wind arrows indicating there's a stiff southwesterly breeze. Eastern and southern Scotland seeing sunny spells, Northern Ireland across England and Wales, temperatures widely into at least the low to mid-20s, around coastal areas, high teens, low 20s. Into tonight, and the cloud in western Scotland becoming more extensive. It pushes into Northern Ireland. There'll be a few mist and fog patches elsewhere, and temperatures down towards the mid to low teens. So the big picture for the weekend on that area of low pressure that brought that horrific flooding into especially Germany, slowly moving southeast, still with the potential for some flooding downpours, but where it's been so exceptionally wet, it will be turning drier. Here, it's high pressure, most are dry. This is that weak weather front in northern Scotland, and from it still tomorrow, some cloud and some patchy rain. Northern Ireland starting cloudy, it'll brighten up. Eastern and southern Scotland seeing sunny spells, but a misty low cloud around some Irish sea coasts. England and Wales, plenty of sunshine. And it'll be hotter in that sunshine. In fact, parts of Yorkshire could see temperature approaching 30 degrees Celsius. It is going to be a hot weekend at Silverstone. Very hot track temperatures as well in the sunshine. And if you're following that golf at Kent, the stiff northerly breeze is going to be easing. A few words of caution about weather like this over the weekend, with high to very high UV levels, burn quickly without protection, and no relief for hay fever sufferers with widely high to very high pollen levels, away of course from those cloudier skies in northern Scotland, still with some outbreaks of rain on Sunday. More cloud elsewhere in Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of northern England and even into North Wales. These areas on Sunday will be a touch cooler, whereas South Wales and southern England will be looking hotter as that temperature gets close to, if not reaching, 30 degrees Celsius. If heat like this isn't for you, just open up the app, go online, pop in your location, and you'll see, and I picked a few places here, into next week where it is so hot over the weekend, it will be turning just a touch cooler, though staying very warm, still with a lot of dry weather, chance of a shower, more especially later next week. Jane.
All right, Nick, thank you, Nick Miller. And just a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. More than 100 people are known to have died in the worst flooding to hit northern Europe for decades. Many more people are injured or missing. And that is all from the news at 1. Have a lovely weekend. On BBC One, we'll join our news teams wherever you are. Bye-bye.